7 true Horror Street Ories. It was fall in rural Missouri, 20 minutes past midnight, and the air was so still it felt like the world had forgotten to breathe. Avery, 23, stood at the back of the abandoned community center. With her hood up, silver eyes glowing faintly under the flickering light. She wasn't alone. Behind the basement door, something old and unnatural had just woken up. The group had come together almost by accident. Avery, enigmatic and quiet. Kira, a witty science grad in her 20s with sharp instincts. And Tomas, calm under pressure, with a past no one could pin down. They thought the trip was about mapping a historic building. What they didn't know was that this place was never on any real map. Avery was the first to feel it. The vibration in the walls, a low hum that seemed to crawl up their bones. Kira laughed it off until she saw the giant handprint scorched into the hallway ceiling. Then they heard footsteps Shivi, slow and deliberate. Tomas tried to keep them calm as they backed into the main room, but the door slammed shut behind them. The creature appeared without warning, 7 feet tall, rotting skin stretched across bulging muscles, and its face a glowing green grin etched into a skull-like mask. Scars crisscrossed its neck and chest like a grotesque map. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. It raised a trembling hand toward Kira, and the lights around them dimmed. Kira froze. She couldn't move, couldn't blink. The thing moved closer, almost studying her. Avery stepped forward then, her presence oddly charged. The creature paused. Their connection was ancient, like something from a story forgotten for good reason. They made it out, but not untouched. Kira was changed. She wouldn't talk about what it whispered to her. Tomas wouldn't sleep near doors. And Avery, she knew it wasn't over. As they left, she looked back once more. The creature had vanished, but the marks on the wall were fresh. It was waiting. It knew them now, and it wouldn't forget. 3 weeks later, deep in the woods of northern Georgia, the moon hung low over an abandoned horse barn. The air was damp, heavy with rot. Tomas lit the lantern just as the green-eyed creature emerged, again its massive silhouette blocking the entrance behind them. The group had come here to trace the roots of what they'd faced in Missouri. Kira had tracked similar energy readings to the outskirts of a forgotten town. Avery had been quiet the entire drive, her hood drawn low. There was something different about her since the last encounter. More still, more focused. Inside the barn, the temperature dropped fast. Chains dangled from wooden beams, swaying without wind. Tomas called out, but his voice was swallowed by silence. Kira wandered toward the far stall, drawn by something humming under the floor. She stepped back. Just in time, clawed fingers burst up through the rotting wood. The creature rose, slow and deliberate, eyes glowing like fire beneath frost. It locked onto Kira. She screamed, but didn't run. It tilted its head, then lunged but stopped inches from her face, breathing in like it recognized her. It spoke this time, a voice low, layered, unnatural. It wanted something from her, something it believed she had brought here. Avery intervened, standing between them. The tension surged. The creature's body pulsed with a sick green light, scars along its arms twitching like veins alive with memory. It raised both hands, and suddenly Tomas was on the floor, gasping, convulsing without being touched. Kira begged it to stop, voice trembling, eyes locked with its. It turned to her again and reached out not to hurt, but to offer. Something old and twisted stirred in the space between them. The barn mirrors cracked, and in the shards, the group saw pieces of themselves reflected wrong, distorted, older, broken. The roof groaned, boards snapped. The creature vanished again in a gust of dust and cold. Avery stood frozen. She had seen it. Towhat it showed them. Nothing. Worse. A future none of them could outrun. They left the barn, but no one spoke. That night, Kira stood by the motel window, her reflection blinking when she didn't. Avery sat by the door, hand wrapped around a stone that pulsed with faint green light. Outside, miles away, a scarecrow in a forgotten field slowly turned its head. Just after midnight, under a black sky scarred with lightning, the group reached an abandoned mining village in Arizona. The air smelled of metal and ash, and the ground still held warmth from something unnatural. From the shadow of a collapsed watchtower, the creature watched them arrive. Kira stepped from the jeep first. Her face was pale, unreadable. Avery followed, her hood low, as always, but her shoulders tense. Tomas scanned the ridge with his flashlight, while Emily, a new addition to the group, took out her camera and whispered to herself about the strange static in the air. The mining site had been closed for over 40 years, but the local legends never faded. Disappearances, screams from inside sealed shafts, and more recently, something glowing in the dark. They had barely reached the main entrance to the shaft when the light behind them flickered and died. The wind stopped, and the silence came. Tomas froze mid-step. Avery turned, sensing it before the others. Standing just beyond the tree line, tall and still, the creature waited. Its skin flickered between pale moss and cracked stone. Glowing veins pulsed beneath it. Its eyes were the color of decay. It moved slowly, each step deliberate. Kira held her breath. Emily instinctively reached for Avery's arm, but Avery stepped forward. She raised her voice, calm but clear, asking what it wanted. The creature tilted its head, eyes locking on Emily. Then it charged. Not fast, not wild, but with unshakable intent. Kira pulled Emily back. The creature raised a hand, and the air bent around its fingers. Stones lifted, suspended in place. Tomas shouted for them to run. Avery didn't move, her feet rooted to the ground, staring directly into its face. The creature paused, inches away from her. It studied her, eyes narrowing, as if waiting for something. Its hand lowered. Then it turned. Inside the mine, the group found more than just rubble. Walls, lined with strange etchings, glowed faintly in Avery's presence. Symbols none of them could read made Kira visibly ill. At the center of a collapsed tunnel, half buried under rocks, was a circular mirror. Not glass, older, breathing. The creature reappeared beside it. No sound, no warning. Emily stepped back, hands trembling. The creature raised both arms, and the mirror began to ripple. In its surface, each member of the group saw a different future. Emily saw her face older, bruised, alone in a hospital. Tomas saw a burning city. Avery saw herself, but changed her eyes matching the creature's owlie. Kira dropped to one knee, clutching her chest. The air had grown thick. She saw herself reflected, standing beside the creature, not running from it. It whispered to her, not in words, but in sensation heat, sorrow, longing. The mirror shattered, not from force, but from rejection. And the creature screamed. It was not a roar. It was something cold, guttural, deep enough to shake the stone beneath them. Avery shouted for them to get out. Tomas dragged Kira. Emily hesitated, but the creature turned again, staring at her, and she fled. Outside, the wind returned violently. Dust spiraled in shapes, faces screaming within it. The group barely made it to the truck before the ridge collapsed behind them. The mine was gone, buried again, or sealed. Back at the motel, Kira wouldn't speak. Emily deleted her footage. Tomas began drawing the etchings from memory. Avery sat alone, hands shaking. In the distance, the desert shimmered unnaturally. Something had followed them back. That night, Emily awoke to whispers. They came from the mirror in the bathroom. Her reflection moved slower than she did. Behind it, a figure stood, watching, silent. And far away, beneath the rubble, The creature opened its eyes again. Its mouth twitched not in rage, but in satisfaction. It wasn't finished. It had only just begun. Under a pale morning sky, in the fog-drenched forest of Olympic National Park, the group stepped quietly onto the moss-covered trail. The trees stood impossibly tall, muffling every sound like a cathedral of silence. From behind a dead cedar, he appeared again, the creature, unmoving, glowing scars across his face, faintly flickering. Avery froze first. The others followed. Thomas clenched his jaw, while Emily instinctively moved closer to Kira. This wasn't just a vision. He had followed them north. The creature stood with its arms by its sides, taller than any human, skin like faded jade, cracked by time, its hollow gaze locked onto Avery. She didn't flinch. They had come to the forest searching for a woman reported missing 3 nights prior. Lena Maddox, a botanist, last seen cataloging fungal species near a remote cabin. But the forest had been changed. Strange patterns burned into the bark of trees, trails twisted, time stretched, and now the source of it all stood before them again. The creature moved only when Avery stepped forward. He turned and began to walk, slowly, not waiting, leading. Against better judgment, they followed. The path grew darker. Branches arched unnaturally overhead. Kira whispered that they should turn back, but no one answered. They arrived at the cabin just as dusk returned too early. The door was gone. The window sealed from inside, and still, the creature stood near the entrance, watching. Inside, Lena was alive, but barely. Pale, eyes unfocused, her body covered in faint, glowing markings similar to the creature's scars. She spoke in fragments, warning of mirrors that moved and roots that whispered. Emily tried to lift her, but Lena screamed at the touch. Suddenly, the creature entered the cabin without a sound. The room darkened instantly. The walls pulsed. It reached toward Lena, not in violence, but as if reclaiming something. Tomas stepped between them. The creature hesitated, then placed a single hand against Tomas's chest. His body lifted into the air, not thrown, held, hovering like gravity had stopped listening. Kira shouted. Avery stepped forward again, her voice calm but firm, calling the creature by a name none of them recognized: Zethar. It turned. Her voice had power over it. The others didn't understand why. Zethar lowered Tomas, unharmed, but his eyes were changed. He stared at Avery now, not with suspicion, but with understanding. Zethar vanished again into the forest, as if absorbed into bark, but the cabin didn't lose its tension. The walls bent, windows shifted. Avery told them they had 1 hour before this place folded in on itself. They carried Lena out. Back on the trail, the fog thickened. Shapes moved just beyond the path. The forest echoed with whispers that didn't match any voice. Kira stumbled. Emily turned to help her, but Froze Zethar stood only feet behind them, silent, waiting. He looked at Emily. For a moment, his face flickered, something human beneath the glow. He reached toward her. She didn't move, but this time, Avery placed her hand over his. There was a sound like glass cracking inside the earth. Then, silence. They emerged from the forest by nightfall, Lena still breathing, Tomas quiet, Emily shaking. Kira kept glancing over her shoulder. Avery walked last, slower than before. In the motel that night, Lena spoke again, clearly this time. She said the forest wasn't cursed, it was watching, waiting for something ancient to return, and Avery was no longer only one of them. Not fully. Later, as Avery stood alone by the mirror in the hallway, Zethar's reflection appeared beside hers, not attacking, not threatening, just present. Outside, the wind shifted, trees bent, the forest had changed shape. The game between light and shadow was only just beginning. In the outskirts of Black Hollow, Arizona, the desert swallowed sound after dusk. A roadside motel flickered under a dim orange sky, its neon sign barely alive. Zethar stood motionless in the parking lot, light pulsing beneath his skin like a dying star. Inside room 6, Tomas locked the door twice. Kira checked the blinds again. Avery sat still at the edge of the bed, sensing something outside long before the others did. Emily paced, trying to find a signal, her nerves frayed. Lena slept uneasily on the second bed, whispers curling from her lips in a forgotten language. They weren't supposed to be followed this far. After escaping the forest, they'd driven west for 2 days, but Zethar never stayed behind. He didn't move like a man. He arrived like a warning. The air grew thinner around him. Light changed. Time tilted slightly. It started again when Emily stepped out for air. She turned left toward the vending machine. Then she saw him, standing between her and the ice machine, eyes glowing faintly. She stopped. Her breath caught. He took one step forward. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the door behind her, but it slammed shut before she touched it. He raised his arm, not to strike, to summon. She dropped to the ground, paralyzed, not by force, but fear. She felt something inside her shift, like he was reading her, peeling her layers apart. Then Kira opened the door. Light broke the tension. Zethar vanished again. Inside, the group argued. Tomas wanted to drive further west. Kira said it wouldn't matter. Lena woke, muttering Avery's name in reverse, and Avriche stayed silent, her eyes darker, her breath slower. She walked to the bathroom mirror and stared at herself. Zethar appeared behind her reflection. He wasn't attacking, he was waiting, observing. Tomas confronted Avery, said she wasn't the same since the cabin. She admitted she heard Zethar in her dreams now, that something inside her had changed. Kira demanded they leave her, but Lena refused. Said Avery was the only one keeping Zethar from taking them all. Later that night, the motel lost power. The air conditioner stopped humming. Silence pressed against the walls. A knock echoed. Then another, not rushed, rhythmic. Kira opened the curtain and screamed. Zethar stood at the edge of the lot, a glowing circle beneath his feet, symbols rotating around his body. Emily grabbed Lena. Tomas blocked the door. Avery didn't move. She whispered a phrase as soft, ancient. Zethar raised his hands. The windows cracked. He entered not through the door, but as if he stepped through the wall itself. The room darkened instantly. Air felt wet. Kira tried to speak, but choked. Zethar turned to Lena, reached out again, but Avery stepped between them. She faced him fully now, unblinking. Her hand lifted slowly. Her voice dropped lower. She spoke again in that language, and Zethar staggered. For the first time, he reacted. Light burst across his face. Scars lit like stars. He grabbed Avery's wrist, not to harm, but to hold. They stood like that for seconds locked, in something deeper than conflict. A tension, ancient, and silent. Avery's body began to glow faintly, same as him. Then, as if pushed by an invisible force, Zethar released her and stepped back. His form shimmered, fading like smoke, and he was gone. Silence returned, heavier now. The others stared at Avery. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. She only said they had one more day before he returned. The next morning, they found symbols burned into the asphalt of the parking lot. A map, a warning, a countdown. Avery stood apart from the group now, watching the sunrise, her reflection still flickering even without a mirror. Tomas asked her what Zethar wanted. She said he wasn't here to kill, he was here to remember, and she was part of that memory now. The wind picked up, the sand danced across the lot. In the distance, the sky cracked with light. They weren't safe, not yet. And somewhere, behind the clouds, Zethar waited. Under the pale light of a cold dawn, the group arrived at Greyhaven, an abandoned mining town buried deep in the Rockies. Fog clung to the rusted structures, curling through broken windows like smoke. Zethar was already there, waiting among the ruins. Tomas parked the van and stepped out with a crowbar in hand. The others followed, tense, alert. Avery walked last, slower than before, her eyes dimmer but focused. Zethar stood atop the old mine entrance, still as stone, watching them descend. They didn't speak. No one dared. Inside the town hall, Lena uncovered journal pages pinned to the wall with nails scratched by inhuman claws, symbols, maps, fragmented chants. She turned to Emily. These weren't just memories. They were instructions. Zethar had been preparing this place. Kira examined a large symbol drawn in ash on the wooden floor. She ran her fingers along its curves. It pulsed faintly, warm, then cold. Zethar appeared in the doorway. His voice broke the silence, low and distant, like it traveled from beneath the ground. He demanded Avery alone, said the rest were irrelevant. Emily refused. She stepped forward. He looked at her, eyes flickering like embers. She froze. Her skin paled. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Kira pulled her back. Later, inside the collapsed church, Zethar found Lena alone. She was tracing the stained glass window with a cracked flashlight. She turned. He was already inches away. He whispered something into her mind. She dropped to her knees, tears falling fast. When Tomas found her, she said nothing, only that she saw something behind his eyes. A past that wasn't dead. A future already written. Night came quickly in Greyhaven. Wind howled through the gaps in the timber. Tomas and Kira built a barricade around the church, but Avery said it wouldn't help. Zethar didn't need doors. He needed memory. And something here was his. The mine, perhaps, or the town itself. In the graveyard, Kira spotted a figure near the largest crypt. She and Tomas approached carefully. It was Emily, alone, trembling, whispering in Zethar's voice. They grabbed her, but her eyes didn't change. Not even when she screamed. Not even when the ground beneath them cracked. The final confrontation began underground. Avery led them through a tunnel beneath the town. Zethar followed, not in steps, but as shadow. They reached a chamber filled with bones and rusted machines. In the center, an altar, carved in the same language Avery spoke. She stood before it. The others circled behind. Zethar entered through the walls. He didn't rush. He moved like a storm slowly forming. He raised one hand. Emily screamed again. This time, the sound ripped the air apart. Tomas ran forward. Zethar turned. Tomas flew against the wall, bones cracking. Kira charged with a metal rod. It melted in her hand before reaching him. Avery stepped onto the altar. She spoke his name, not Zethar, but something older. The chamber shivered. Zethar stopped. The light inside him dimmed. She said she knew what he was now. Not a monster. A wound. A piece of memory torn from another world. He approached, silent. She didn't move. They touched foreheads. For a second, no one breathed. Then a blinding light. The chamber collapsed. Dust. Silence. Then Avery stood alone. Zethar was gone. Tomas coughed from the rubble. Kira dragged Emily free. Lena staggered toward the exit. Avery didn't speak. Her eyes glowed faintly now. She carried a mark across her arm. The altar burned it into her. Back on the surface, Greyhaven cracked. Its buildings sank slightly. The fog thickened. Tomas asked if it was over. Avery said no, only paused. In the distance, thunder rolled. From beneath the mountain, something moved. Slow, deep, a breath long forgotten. Avery turned to them. He wasn't the only one. Under a bleeding dusk sky, the group reached the perimeter of Raventon Asylum, abandoned since the 1960s. Ivy grew thick over the gates, and cold wind echoed with faint laughter from deep inside. On the third-floor window, a silhouette moved sharp, tall, watching them. It was Merrick. He had been here before them. Not in body, but mind. The asylum walls pulsed with energy he left behind, and now reclaimed. Kira hesitated at the threshold. Avery pressed forward, whispering that the map they'd followed wasn't just Inkit, was a binding mark. Inside, dust choked the air, and memories clung like wet cloth. They passed rusted gurneys, shattered glass, and doors that groaned when touched. Each room had its own voice. All whispered Merrick. In the old surgical ward, Lena found photographs. Faces scratched out, except one. A young woman bound to a chair, tears frozen in time. Emily stared at it longer than she should have. Then the room temperature dropped. The lights flickered. The photograph bled at the corners. Merrick stood behind her. She turned too late. The others heard her scream. Tomas broke down the door. Emily was alone, face pale, mumbling, a name none of them had heard. Kira slapped her. She snapped back, but stared at Avery and asked why she didn't stop him before. Avery went silent. Deeper in the asylum, Merrick played with perception. Hallways repeated. Clocks ticked backward. Lena saw her sister in a mirror. Tomas found a letter addressed to his dead wife. They weren't hallucinations. Merrick peeled them open, forced them to watch, forced them to feel. In the padded cell corridor, they found Merrick walking in slow circles around a young woman. Eyes sewn shut, she mouthed something soundless. Her hands trembled as she reached for help. He turned to the group, smiling with no warmth. He called the woman his choir. She sang memories. He said she'd scream soon. Avery stepped forward, her voice calm. She told Merrick she'd seen what he was hiding. Not power, guilt. That his cruelty was a wall, not a weapon. He laughed, then vanished. The girl fell silent. They descended into the sub-basement. Pipes dripped black liquid, doors opened without touch. One led to the archive room, files of every patient, including one marked Marette Graves. Date of death, unknown. Cause, unreconciled. Suddenly, the lights died. Tomas shouted. Kira swung wildly. Avery lit a flare. In that glow, Merrick emerged from the ceiling, crawling like a spider. He grabbed Lena, held her throat, told Avery to choose, him or her. Avery whispered a word in the old tongue. The flare exploded. Merrick screamed, dropping Lena. The walls cracked. The asylum began to quake. They ran toward the exit, but Merrick stood in the doorframe, body twisted, bleeding black. He said no one leaves who remembers him. Emily raised the photograph, said his name aloud. He convulsed. Fire burst from the walls. The building screamed. Outside, night had fallen fully. The asylum sank into its own foundation, swallowed. Tomas gasped for breath. Lena cried. Avery turned to the smoldering ruin. A shadow moved in the smoke. Merrick still lingered. Not whole, but awake. 6 true Horror Street Ories. It was early autumn in northern Oregon, near the edge of Tillamook State Forest. The fog was thick that morning, veiling the narrow forest road as my SUV rolled deeper into the trees. He was standing there perfectly still, a man, in a white suit and matching hat, right in the middle of the road. My name is Travis Cole, 29, freelance photographer. I wasn't alone. Beside me in the passenger seat sat Dana Lowell, 27, a nature researcher with a sharp mind and sharper instincts. Behind us, Milo and Briartwo, old friends from college, both now working in environmental science. And then there was her, a woman we found hours earlier, lost, wandering barefoot along the tree line. She called herself Ember, short dark hair, pale bluish skin, and eyes that glowed faintly like reflected moonlight under her hood. She never said where she came from. We were headed off-grid for a week-long survival documentary project. But the moment we picked Ember up, everything started to change. The air got colder. The GPS spun in circles. And then the man appeared. No face, just shadows beneath his white hat. The same grin carved into every memory of that day. That night, while we camped near the abandoned ranger station, Briar swore she saw someone standing behind her in the reflection of a broken window. Dana began hearing voices, just her name, whispered softly, then gone. Milo tried to keep us grounded, but his hands trembled as he lit the fire. Ember never slept. She just stared into the forest like she was listening to something none of us could hear. The second night, we found the first circle. sticks and stones arranged in a symbol we couldn't identify. In the center, a feather-white glove, perfectly clean. Dana picked it up. Her nose started bleeding seconds later. That same night, the man came back. Just outside the tent. He whispered something through the canvas. Ember stood between him and us. She didn't speak, but her presence pushed him back into the woods. By the fourth night, we had stopped speaking much. Shadows moved when we didn't. Lights flickered inside our eyes, even when they were closed. Ember took Dana's hand, whispering, "You can't let him mark you." But it was too late. When Dana disappeared the next morning, we searched for hours before finding her standing waist-deep in the freezing river, staring, silent. Her skin was cold, but marked. She didn't remember anything. But later that night, when the fire went out on its own, she whispered the same phrase the man had. Word for word. We made a plan to leave at first light, but the road was gone. Trees where the road should have been. Milo screamed when he saw the white hat resting on the hood of the SUV. Ember didn't move. She just said, "He's almost ready." I don't know what she meant, but I do know this. Whatever we let in that day didn't leave with us. And somewhere in that forest, behind fog and silence, the man in the white hat is still waiting, watching, and smiling. It was 4:18 a.m. when the radio turned on by itself. We hadn't touched it in 2 days. And yet there it was, crackling through static, whispering a song none of us recognized, a tune half buried under white noise and breath. The fog hadn't lifted since that morning in Tillamook. Travis was at the wheel, hands clenched, sweat trailing down his neck. Ember sat silent, staring out the window. Milo and Briar were in the back. None of us spoke. After Dana walked into the river last night and forgot everything, we knew something was changing. But the man in the white hat hadn't left. He came again at dusk. We saw him standing at the edge of a clearing as we passed. Perfectly still, grinning. No footsteps, no sound. Just the sensation that something had shifted in the world. We set up camp near a collapsed fire tower. Ember drew a line of salt around our site. When asked why, she just said, "It won't stop him, but it slows him down." No one questioned her, not after what we saw. At 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of soft footsteps circling the tent. I held my breath. Milo was next to me, unmoving, his eyes wide open. Outside, something scraped lightly along the canvas. Then, a whisper, just a breath, but laced with a smile. "You look like her." I didn't move. Ember lit a flare and stepped out. The red light caught him half shrouded in mist, standing only feet away. The same white suit, the same spotless hat, but something was wrong with the space around him. The trees bent slightly inward, as if pulled toward him. Ember stared at him. Calm. Wider. "She's marked now." I didn't sleep the rest of the night, neither did Milo. The next day, Travis wanted to find the river again. Maybe retrace Dana's steps, find some clue. The GPS failed hours ago. We relied on Ember, who walked without hesitation, always slightly ahead. The deeper we moved, the quieter everything became. Even the birds stopped. That's when we found the cabin, hidden beneath thick vines and rot. It looked abandoned for decades, but the door was open. Inside were photographs, black and white, dozens of them pinned to the wall. Each one showed the same man in a white hat. Different places, different people, always watching from the background. One of them showed Ember as a child. She stared at it without blinking. Her voice was a whisper. "He never forgets." We wanted to leave immediately, but as we turned, Travis collapsed, his hands shaking violently. Ember knelt, checked his eyes. "He touched the photograph," she said. "Now he sees." For the next hour, Travis didn't speak. When he did, He said things that didn't belong to him. Phrases like, "She walks with borrowed time," and "the river remembers all." That night, we made camp far from the cabin, but it didn't help. Milo screamed in the middle of the night. When we rushed to him, we found him backed against a tree, pointing to nothing. He swore he saw the man, crouching inches from his face, grinning, mouthing words with no sound. Later, I found a white feather in my boot, soft, clean, and cold to the touch. I confronted Ember. I needed to know what she wasn't telling us. She looked at me, eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "He's not hunting us. He's calling us back." "Back where?" I asked. "Where we first broke the rule, where someone answered when they weren't supposed to." She wouldn't say more. The final night, it all fell apart. Travis disappeared. No screams, no struggle, just gone. We searched until sunrise. No tracks, no trail, but where he slept, there was a white hat, still warm. Then the radio came back on, just static, and that humming, the tune again. But this time, it wasn't alone. Beneath it, a voice, a low murmur, repeating the same phrase. One by one, Briar. Milo left first. Said he'd rather face the trees alone than spend another hour listening to the whispers. I never saw him again. Ember and I walked for hours before we found the same river Dana vanished into. She stopped at the edge, told me not to follow. Said the man only needs one more. She stepped into the current. It didn't drag her down. It welcomed her. She turned once, smiled, and vanished beneath the water. Now I'm alone. I'm writing this from the ranger station, or what's left of it. The radio plays at night, whether I touch it or not. The man watches from outside the window. He never knocks. He just waits and smiles. If you find this, don't look for us. Don't answer if he speaks your name. And never, ever follow the river. The 3rd of November, 4:12 p.m., Windermere County, Oregon. The fog rolled in faster than usual, heavy, silent, pale as bone. He was already inside when the front door creaked open by itself. 3 days after Ember vanished in the river, I found a map folded inside her jacket. It showed an old estate deep in the western hills, a place she circled in red and wrote one word beside it: return. I didn't want to go, but Milo was still out there, and something told me he went looking for her too. The Echo House sat on a stretch of land nobody claimed, shingles peeled off like skin, the windows darkened by time, ivy strangling the front porch, the woods pressed close behind it, quiet and watching. I knocked. Nothing. Inside, the air was colder than outside. The silence had weight. Every step echoed as if the walls remembered the sounds. I passed a mirror in the hallway. My reflection didn't follow. That's when I heard the first voice. A whisper from the top of the stairs. It wasn't a name, just a sound, like someone breathing through a smile. Then I saw him, standing at the end of the hall. Same white hat, same suit, untouched by dust. The light above him flickered. He tilted his head slightly, as if curious, and vanished before I could move. I should have left, but Milo's bag was by the fireplace, half zipped, still warm. As I searched the rooms, I found symbols carved into the wooden floors, circles, eyes, mouths, all smiling, and in the attic, old cassette tapes, each one labeled with names, people I didn't know, until I found one that said Ember. I played it. All it held was silence, then her voice, faint, shaking. He doesn't walk, he waits, and when you see him smile, it's already too late. That night, I slept in the living room, lights on, door locked. Around 3 a.m., I heard the floorboards creak from above, something dragging, something slow. I didn't check. I couldn't. By morning, the front door was open again. Footprints led in, but none let out. Then I saw her. A girl, maybe mid-20s, pale skin, short black hair beneath a hood, her eyes bright, glowing faintly even in daylight. She stood just outside the tree line, watching. When I called out, she turned and walked into the woods. I followed. For hours I traced her path, until I found an old garden behind the house, buried in weeds. In the center, a statue, cracked, faceless, holding a hat, the same kind. Behind it, a door beneath the ground, hidden. I opened it. The staircase was narrow, wet. The air inside was wrong. Heavy, metallic, but not blood, more like old breath. There, beneath the house, was a long hallway, lined with portraits, not paintings photos, all recent. Dozens of people, all staring straight ahead, no one smiling, except one. At the far end, lit by flickering bulbs, was a photo of me, already framed. I turned, and he was behind me, inches away. I couldn't move. He leaned in, slowly, like he was listening for my heartbeat. His smile never changed, but his voice came through the walls. You saw the river, you heard the song, now you carry it. Then everything went black. I woke outside, cold, covered in leaves. My watch was gone. The Echo House, gone too. Where it had been was only a clearing, as if it never stood. I walked for hours before I found the road. A truck driver picked me up, asked if I was part of that missing hikers group from Tillamook. I didn't answer. Now, I hear the static again. In the walls, in the trees. At night, someone hums outside my window. I haven't seen Ember, or Milo, but sometimes I find feathers. Still white, still warm. This isn't over. And I think the house moved. The 9th of December, 2:38 a.m., outskirts of Stonebridge, Washington. The snow was fresh, but the footprints were old. Inside the abandoned motel, room 7's door was slightly open. She was standing by the window, staring out into the forest. Pale hands, bare feet, her black dress clinging to her thin frame like a shadow. She didn't look at me, not at first. Just whispered one sentence, low and broken. He lives under the room. The motel had been closed since the fires. Locals said no one made it out, but the records said otherwise. One name kept showing up, Vera Elwood, age 17, last seen entering room 5 years ago. We weren't supposed to stop. The plan was to drive straight through, but the blizzard forced us off-road. The group was already tense after what happened near Echo House. Milo still hadn't spoken since we left. His eyes flicked toward the dark corners like he expected something to reach out. Harper and I took the top floor. Jason volunteered to check the basement. That's where things went wrong. 30 minutes after he went down, we heard the first sound. Not screaming. Laughter. Thin, echoing, like it was pressed through static. Then silence. When I opened the trapdoor behind the vending machine, the air rushed out like breath. The stairs led deeper than they should have. Jason's flashlight lay on the 3rd step, still flickering. I went down. The walls were lined with old drawings, childlike, smeared in charcoal. Each one showed the same thing. A figure with no face, no hands, just a black hat and teeth too wide for a human mouth. At the end of the hall, a girl, same one from upstairs. But now her eyes were empty, like the sockets were painted black. She tilted her head and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she smiled. Behind her, a door creaked open by itself. A long finger emerged first. Then the rest of him. He didn't walk. He unfolded, like something remembering how to be human. I ran, but the hallway stretched longer. The faster I moved, his voice followed, soft and wrong. You took her light. Now she lives in me. Back upstairs, Milo was gone. Harper stood frozen in the corner, shaking. When I touched her, she screamed like she'd never seen me before. Over and over, she kept repeating. He was inside her eyes. He was inside her eyes. We tried to leave. The van doors wouldn't open. Snow piled higher than the windows. We boarded room 7 and waited. That night, something knocked on the walls. Not from outside, from behind them. The girl came again. This time she spoke. He trades faces. Each night, a new one. Each lie, a piece of you he takes. Until you're only echo. She looked at Harper and said, "He liked yours best." The lights died. The air grew thick with smoke, not fire. Something worse. I saw Jason crawling from the corner, his mouth torn into a grin, his eyes gone, still alive, still moving. The girl didn't stop him. When morning came, there were only 2 of us left, me and Milo. Harper had vanished during the blackout. Only her shoes remained. Milo wrote one word on the wall with his own blood. Below. We left the motel behind, but not the thing. It came with us. We see it in mirrors, in dreams, in the spaces between waking. Some nights, Milo whispers while he sleeps. Her name, Vera, and in that same tone she used, he tells me he lives under the room. This isn't about surviving anymore. It's about what you bring back with you. Some doors, once opened, don't close. 3. True Night Stalker Horror Street Ories. The 12th of September, 2022, Hollow Pines, Oregon, 7:14 p.m. The mist rolled low like something crawling, thick between the trees. That's when we saw him, the figure in the white hat, perfectly still, watching us from the edge of the forest. Alina was leading us. She was 23, strangely calm, hood pulled tight over her short black hair, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Her skin had a pale green hue under the moonlight. I'd only met her once before, but she felt like someone who didn't quite belong to this world. I was Damon. Lila and Marcus' friends from college were the only reason I came. None of us knew this trip would be our last normal night. The trail led us deep into forgotten woods, past an old ranger cabin swallowed by vines. By dusk, our phones were dead. The compass spun. We should have left then. But Alina said we were close to something worth seeing, something she needed to find. That night, by the fire, the forest was too quiet. No crickets, no wind. Then Lila went still. Across the flames, a man stood between the trees. He wore a white vest and a white-brimmed hat. His hands folded politely in front. The fire flickered, but the shadows on his face stayed still like they didn't belong to the light. He watched us. Then, he turned and melted into the dark. The next morning, Marcus found writing etched into a tree behind the tent. "She is not yours to save." No footprints, no tool marks, just the words. Alina's eyes dimmed. She didn't speak much. That night, she wandered toward the edge of the camp, like pulled by something unseen. The rest of us followed, but stayed back. At 3:11 a.m., a cold, pale light flashed across the trees. No sound. Marcus vanished, just gone. We ran in every direction. Nothing. Alina found his watch half buried in moss. The woods changed after that. We couldn't find the same path twice. Time didn't move right. The man appeared again closer now, watching, humming. Lila began crying in her sleep. She begged Alina to tell us what he was. Alina just said, "He's not hunting, he's remembering." That night, the man stepped into our camp. Not running, walking, gentle, silent. He stood behind Lila, so close she trembled. Then he turned to me. No sound, just that smile. He raised a shard of mirror. I saw my reflection and something else behind my eyes. Then he was gone. And Alina whispered, "When he's done watching, one of us leaves, the others stay." The 2nd of October, 2022, Cradle Ridge, Northern Oregon, 11:19 p.m. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. Somewhere between the hills, we lost the road. Then we saw him again standing on the wet asphalt, coat dry despite the downpour. His white hat glowed faintly under the broken headlights. Face hidden, still as ever, the same man from Hollow Pines, the one who took Marcus. But now, there were only 3 of US May, Damon, Lila, and Alina, who barely spoke since that night in the woods. She just stared out into the fog, like she was waiting for him to come back. We abandoned the car after it died, walked toward the lights of an old ranger station Alina claimed to remember, but the lights never got closer. It was as if the forest stretched when we moved. Each step just deepened the silence. The trees leaned, the mud swallowed our tracks behind us. That night, while Lila slept under a tarp, the figure reappeared, closer this time, his pale hand extended, offering something wrapped in dark cloth. I didn't take it. He didn't move. Just waited. When I blinked, he was gone. Lila woke screaming, said she felt something crawl over her chest. We found long slits in the tarp, no animals nearby, no tracks, only a faint humming in the air, like someone singing beneath the ground. Alina said softly, "He's not following. He's walking the same steps again. He's done this before." By the 3rd day, the cold set in. We hadn't eaten since we left the car. The rivers were dry, but the moss was damp. We drank what we could. That night, we found a shack buried in overgrowth. Wooden carvings of human faces lined the walls, each one twisted in fear. None had eyes. Inside, Lila found a mirror leaning against the far wall. She touched it and screamed. Her reflection wasn't her. It blinked wrong, smiled while she cried. Then it turned and walked away. The man was outside again, standing behind a tree, almost playful, tipping his hat once. Slowly, a warning. Alina stepped between him and Lila, her skin now more green than pale, her breath colder than the wind. She whispered to him, "I know why you're here, but you're not taking her." The man stepped forward, no sound, just the weight of him bent the air. Lila grabbed my hand. I couldn't move. The lights in the shack flickered without power. Alina faced him. Their shadows clashed, one sharp, the other shivering. Then, without touching, he turned his head slightly tilted, like disappointed. He vanished into the fog. But the carvings on the wall changed. One of the faces now looked like Lila. We left before sunrise. The forest spat us out onto the same road where we began. Only now, there was no car, just footprints, 100 of them, all ours, all leading into the woods. Alina said nothing. She looked older, tired. That night, at the motel we found miles later, I heard humming through the vents. Same tune, same rhythm. I opened the door to the hallway. Empty, but on the mirror beside the bed, someone had written, "You left something behind." He remembers. Then the lights went out, and the white hat appeared in the reflection, closer than before. The 7th of October, 2022. Stillwater Cabin, Mount Rainier National Park, Washington, 3:13 a.m. The lake was black, unmoving. The moon shimmered above it, distorted, like it didn't want to be seen. And standing at the far dock, silent, watching us, was the man in the white hat. No footprints, no breath in the cold air. Just the sharp contrast of his pale coat against the night and the faint glint of his unnaturally wide smile. Alina froze. Damon gripped the axe handle without lifting it. Lila stepped back, whispering my name. I couldn't answer. The man didn't move, but we felt him approach. We had come here to get answers. The Ranger's Journal had mentioned this place Stillwater Cabin. Built in 1929, abandoned in 1971, after a series of disappearances no one explained. We weren't sure what we were looking for, only that the man had been here before. Inside, the cabin was dry despite the storm, dustless, too clean, like someone had prepared it. Alina found the mirror first, tucked behind a false wall, large, old, but without a single scratch. When she touched it, her skin glowed faintly green. Damon saw it. She pulled away quickly, eyes wide, but said nothing. That night, The mirror showed things we couldn't explain. Shadows moving behind us that weren't there. The man in the white hat pacing along the dock when none of us were outside. He would look directly into the reflection, though never into our eyes. Lila broke first. She said she saw him in her sleep, sitting at the foot of her bed, not moving, just waiting. She said his smile never faded, that he whispered her name without speaking. The next night, Lila disappeared. We found her at the dock, barefoot, eyes glazed. She was whispering to the lake. He says, "I belong to him now." She didn't remember saying it. Alina pulled her back inside, but the mirror cracked that night. Spiderweb lines, like veins running from the center. Damon covered it with a blanket, but in the morning, it was gone. The blanket, the mirror, both. He was in the hallway when we turned, right outside the door, only for a second, then nothing. But the scent of wet soil remained, and the floorboards were damp with no rain. Damon wanted to leave, said none of this made sense. Alina disagreed. She believed the cabin was a tether, a point where the veil was thinner, the man wasn't following, Ush, was part of this place. She wanted to stay, to find the source. The conflict came to a peak when Damon and Alina argued about burning the cabin. She stood in front of the fireplace, refusing, said if we destroyed the link, he'd scatter, spread. We'd never contain him again. Damon didn't believe in any of it, until the mirror reappeared on the wall, flawless. And in it, we saw Lila floating above her bed, eyes black, arms raised. We ran to her. She was unconscious, breathing, but cold, too cold. The man stood outside again, closer, his smile now wider than before, unnatural. We saw his face for the first time, or what was left of it. It was blurred, shifting like water disturbed by wind. No eyes, only outlines. His mouth stretched far too long. Alina whispered something under her breath. The floor trembled. The cabin creaked. Damon grabbed Lila, dragging her toward the exit. Alina didn't follow. He only comes when you run. She stayed, faced the figure, her green skin now glowing. The air shimmered. The man stepped into the doorway, tall, silent. The reflection of him flickered behind every glass surface. Then, he raised a hand. Alina flinched, but held her ground. And then, silence. Utter silence. No wind, no breath. The world paused. When I turned, they were both gone. The doorway empty. Only a faint line of ash on the wood where Alina had stood. We made it down the mountain by dawn. Lila still hadn't spoken. Damon didn't look back once. But at every reflective surface car windows, puddles, polished stone, I saw movement. Subtle. A tilt of the hat. A grin too wide to be human. The next motel we found was empty. We took a room, locked the door. On the bathroom mirror, something was written in condensation that hadn't been there before. She chose to stay. But the door is still open. The 3rd of December, 2022. Hollow Ridge, Blackwater Forest, Oregon, 2:47 a.m. The moon barely made a dent in the heavy clouds above. The forest was thick, almost suffocating, with an unnatural stillness that made the hairs on our necks rise. And standing there, just inside the tree line, the man in the white hat. We had driven 2 days straight to escape. Alina insisted on finding another place, a hidden refuge in the woods where the past couldn't follow, but it followed us anyway. Every step we took, every path we crossed, the man's shadow lingered just beyond the edge of our vision, always waiting. The cabin was isolated, barely a mile from the nearest road. No signs, no warning, just the tall pines, their dark branches swaying gently in the windless night. As we entered, the door creaked ominously, and the air inside felt wrong too quiet. The windows were locked from the inside, and there were no other tracks in the snow. Alina stood by the window, eyes scanning the trees. Damon was pacing, too restless to sit. Lila, ever silent, stared at the fire. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't the cabin itself, it was us. We weren't meant to be here, not with him watching. Then the knock came, a hollow sound that echoed through the cabin, too loud in the silence. We froze. Another knock. This one, softer, more deliberate. Alina approached the door, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the handle. Damon moved to stop her, but it was too late. The door swung open with a soft thud, revealing nothing but the dark emptiness of the forest. And then, like an echo, the man's voice. "I'm still waiting." That was when I saw it. The reflection in the window, his figure, framed by the dark trees, standing impossibly still. His smile stretched wider, if that was even possible. And his eyes, they weren't eyes at all, just black holes that seemed to pull in everything around them. The more I stared, the more my thoughts started to blur. His presence wasn't just terrifying, it was consuming. Damon yelled for us to pack, but before anyone could move, the fire in the hearth flared up, flames roaring out of control. Alina screamed as the heat intensified, and the room became suffocating. We rushed to the door, but it wouldn't open. The lock had twisted on its own, as if someone or something was holding it shut. "Not yet," the voice echoed, low and cold, like it was coming from everywhere. Lila fell to the floor, clutching her head as if something was forcing its way into her mind. Alina tried to pull her up, but the moment her hand touched Lila's arm, her skin started to change. The color faded, turning a sickly shade of green, and her eyes rolled back, revealing nothing but the white sclera. "I belong to him," Lila whispered, her voice not her own. Alina backed away in horror. No, Lila, this isn't you." But it wasn't Lila anymore. It was something else, something the man had planted inside her. Damon lunged at her, but the moment his hands made contact, Lila's body jerked violently, throwing him back against the wall. A sickening crack echoed in the air as his head collided with the wooden beam. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. That was when the man stepped inside. Slowly, deliberately. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. His mere presence seemed to distort reality, warping the very space around him. The walls seemed to close in, and the air grew colder with each step he took. And still, his smile never faltered. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice a low hiss. "But you are here now, and now you will stay." I reached for the axe. My hands were shaking, but I had no choice. It was him or us. With every swing, the blade seemed to go through him as if he weren't even there. The man never flinched, never moved, just stood there, watching, smiling. The more I swung, the more the room seemed to stretch. The walls blurred, the cabin's wooden structure fading into a vast, empty darkness. And then it clicked. He was not just here. He was the cabin. He was the forest. The land itself was tethered to him, and we were caught in his snare. Alina pulled me back. "No, don't you see? We can't fight him like this." But it was too late. Lila had risen from the floor, her body twisted unnaturally, joints cracking as she stood. The green light that radiated from her eyes pulsed, syncing with the flickering of the fire. The mirror had appeared again this time, not as an object, but as a reflection in the flames. In the fire, we saw something, no, someone, Alina, standing by the mirror, her eyes glowing with the same sickly green. But it wasn't her, it was him. He was inside her now. I turned to Damon, but he was gone. His body lay motionless by the door, eyes wide open. In the mirror, the man was smiling again. This is just the beginning. A crack ran through the cabin. The ground trembled, and everything went dark. The next morning, the snow had covered everything. There was no sign of the cabin, no trace of our presence. Only a single, fresh footprint leading into the woods. It was his. And on the cold, silent wind, I could still hear his voice. "I'm still waiting." The 15th of February, 2023. Blackwater Forest, Oregon, midnight. The trees stood like ancient sentinels, their twisted branches casting ominous shadows across the snow-covered ground. And once again, the man in the white hat appeared this time, closer than ever. The tension in the air was thick, oppressive. No matter how many times we tried to escape, no matter how many paths we took, he always found us. It was as if he had mastered the land itself, like the forest was his extension, and we were just unwelcome guests. We had hoped, foolishly, it seemed that leaving the cabin would end it, but we were wrong. Alina gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, eyes darting nervously between the rearview mirror and the dark road ahead. Damon sat beside her, silent, his gaze lost in the night outside. Lila and I were in the back seat, the unease palpable among us. We had made it 2 hours from Blackwater, but the forest was still there, looming in the distance, as though it would never let us leave. Then it happened. A flicker in the rearview mirror, a flash of white. A figure. No, not a figure. A man. The same man. And this time, he was walking toward us on the road, his gait slow, deliberate, his face obscured by the shadow of his white hat. Alina slammed on the brakes, but the car skidded, coming to a stop just inches from him. There was no impact, no sound of tires screeching against gravel. The world was eerily still. Damon opened his mouth to speak, but the man raised his hand, silencing him. Then, without moving, the air around him seemed to ripple, distorting the space, as if reality itself bent to his will. We couldn't move. We couldn't breathe. "I've been waiting." The man's voice was low, the words curling like smoke, twisting around us, filling the car. Alina's hands trembled on the wheel. "Who are you?" she whispered, barely able to get the words out. The man smiled, and that smile, it was a thing of nightmares. His lips stretched too far, too wide, and his eyes' black voids seemed to swallow every bit of light around them. "I am the one who waits, the one who never leaves. I am everywhere you go, and I always know where you are." His voice came again, this time in my mind. "You're not safe. You'll never be." The car began to shake. At first, just a small tremor, but then harder, more violent, as if the ground itself was waking up. The headlights flickered. The engine sputtered. The man took a slow step forward, and in that moment, I saw it clearly. He wasn't just standing in front of the car. He was inside it. Lila screamed as the temperature dropped dramatically, her breath freezing in front of her, her face contorted with pain, her eyes wide, terrified. He's in here. I can feel him inside me." The man leaned closer to the car, his face now only inches from the window. "You should have stayed away," he whispered, his voice a venomous hiss. In that moment, everything changed. Alina tried to start the engine, but it stalled again. The man's laughter echoed in the night, a sound that sent chills down our spines. Then, the trees behind us began to move, bending and twisting unnaturally, as though they were alive, crawling toward us. I grabbed the door handle, desperate to escape, but the door wouldn't open. It was as though the car itself had been sealed by his power. Damon hit the window with his fists, but it cracked, then healed itself immediately. "I told you," the man murmured, his face just barely visible through the crack. "You can never escape." Lila convulsed in the back seat, her body shaking violently. "He's coming for us," she gasped, her voice barely audible over the growing noise outside. Then, everything fell silent. The shaking stopped, the wind died down, and the man was gone. But we could still feel him. His presence lingered, oppressive, pressing in on us. The forest was still there, its twisted trees watching, waiting. Alina forced the car into gear, speeding down the road. We didn't care where we went anymore. We just needed to leave, to get away from him. But no matter how fast we drove, the forest never ended. The trees were always there, always watching, and always waiting. And as the night stretched on, one thing became painfully clear. We were never alone. When we finally reached the nearest town, I felt a brief moment of relief. It was small, run down nothing to indicate it had anything to do with Blackwater or the horrors we had faced. We pulled into a gas station, hoping for a moment of peace. But the man's voice came again, this time over the radio, crackling in the static. "It's not over." And then, Through the cracked window, I saw it a shadow just beyond the lights of the station, his figure standing still, watching. Three True Ring Camera Horror Street Ories. It was 2:38 a.m. in Marlow Creek, a quiet suburb just outside Savannah, Georgia. The air was heavy, and the only sound came from cicadas buzzing in the dark. That's when the Ring camera lit up, capturing the first glimpse of her pale skin, tangled black hair, and a body crawling low like something broken. Nicole, 23, had just moved into the house with her friends Marcus and Dana. The place was supposed to be a fresh start after college, but something about the house felt wrong from the beginning. The lights flickered without cause, doors creaked open on their own, and the Ring kept pinging them with false alerts, so they thought. One night, Nicole woke up to the sound of her name, whispered from the hallway. She sat up, heart pounding, and reached for her phone. The Ring camera had gone off again. Dana joined her, both staring at the screen. A woman was crawling across the porch, limbs twisted, hair dragging behind her. Her face was pale, lips cracked, and she tilted her head as if listening to something unseen. Marcus, who didn't believe in ghosts, went outside to check. The yard was empty, but the front door was ajar. Nicole begged him to come back, but he stepped further into the dark. Inside, Dana screamed. The woman was now on the ceiling, crawling above them with a jerky, insect-like motion. Nicole froze. The figure dropped to the floor behind her and whispered something that made no sense words backwards, repeated like a chant. The next night, Nicole found claw marks on her mirror. Dana swore she saw the woman staring from the closet. Their fear grew, and sleep became impossible. One morning, Nicole disappeared. No screams, no sound, just her phone left on the floor showing the last Ring footage. The woman crawling into Nicole's room, eyes locked on the lens, smiling. The police found no signs of forced entry, just the footage and a faint smell of lavender and decay. Marcus and Dana stayed in town, unable to leave. The Ring still records every night, and now the woman sometimes whispers Marcus's name. They haven't told anyone what the woman said before Nicole vanished, but it's coming closer every night. It was 3:11 a.m. when the Ring camera blinked again, this time from inside the hallway. Dana had installed it secretly, unable to sleep since Nicole vanished. What it captured wasn't footsteps or shadows. It was the woman, crawling sideways along the hallway wall, her neck twisted, her mouth moving without sound. She paused outside Nicole's old room. The door creaked open on its own. Dana and Marcus hadn't touched that door in days. They kept it shut, taped from the outside, like sealing away the truth would stop it from bleeding into the rest of the house. But every night the tape peeled away, and the room always smelled like lavender, sweet and rotting. Marcus tried to rationalize it, said it was stress, trauma, unresolved grief. But then he found the Ring footage from the night before one that neither of them remembered seeing. The woman was perched above their bedroom closet, her face half hidden in her hair, watching them sleep. The footage ended with her crawling back into the shadows, like she'd never been there at all. Dana started hearing Nicole's voice, first from her phone speaker when there was no audio playing, then from the walls. Whispers behind drywall, like someone calling from inside. One night, she followed it into the laundry room. The light above her flickered. In the reflection of the washing machine door, the woman's face appeared upside down. Her lips moved slowly, forming one word: come. They brought in someone, a woman named Lydia, local paranormal investigator, who agreed to help only after seeing the Ring clips. She walked the house with a handheld EMF device, saying nothing for minutes. Then she stopped in front of Nicole's room. The device spiked. She placed a mirror on the floor and sat in silence. The mirror darkened. Her reflection didn't match her movements. The pale woman appeared behind her. Lydia stood slowly. She whispered to Marcus, her voice trembling, "It's not just haunting. It's inviting." That night, the Ring camera caught Dana in her sleep standing, eyes open, walking toward Nicole's room. She entered, stayed inside for 7 minutes. When she returned to bed, her hands were stained with dust. In the morning, she remembered nothing. Marcus found something in Nicole's closet. Under a loose floorboard, a small porcelain figure. A woman bent backward, arms twisted, face blank. Lavender petals surrounded it. He threw it out. That night, the woman was in the hallway again, this time standing, not crawling. Her eyes were black. The ring feed cut off before she stepped closer. The next day, Dana stopped talking. She sat at the kitchen table, fingers tracing invisible shapes on the wood. Marcus showed her the camera footage. She didn't blink. He asked if she remembered last night. She finally spoke. She said Nicole is still breathing. Marcus tried leaving town, booked a motel 2 hours away. But as he packed, every screen in the house turned on. Ring, phone, television, all showing the same footage. The woman crawling toward the camera, her mouth wide open, no sound, just moving closer and closer until her face filled the frame. Then the lights went out. He stayed. That night, Dana screamed. Marcus ran in, found her staring into the mirror. The reflection behind her was wrong. The woman was mimicking Dana's expression. Then, the reflection reached forward. The mirror cracked. Dana collapsed. Marcus carried her out, past the hallway Ring camera. It lit up once more. The final footage showed Nicole's door wide open. Inside, the bed was made. A faint lavender glow pulsed from under it. And, beneath the sheets, a figure slowly sat up. Nicole. But her eyes were no longer hers. They watch that clip every night. It never changes. But the woman always looks just a little closer to the camera than before. And now, she's starting to smile. It was 3:38 a.m. when Marcus awoke to the sound of something dragging across the floor. The house felt colder, despite the Georgia summer heat. He was still shaken by the last few days. The visions, the strange whispers. His eyes locked onto the Ring camera feed. His own face stared back at him from the screen. But something was wrong. In the darkened hallway, there was a shadow, a twisted shape crawling toward his room. It wasn't just the woman this time. It was a figure, someone or something else, walking on all fours like an animal. The pale woman was there too, crawling in sync with it, but the other figure, it was different. Its body contorted in unnatural angles, its limbs elongated, fingers dragging on the floor. It stopped just before the door to his room, the ring feed flickering violently before cutting off. Marcus bolted upright in his bed, breath quick and shallow. The room was silent, but the air felt thick like it was closing in around him. Dana was gone. He rushed down the stairs, his heart pounding in his chest. The house felt like a maze now, each corner darker than the last. The living room was empty, and the front door was wide open. The wind outside had picked up, pushing the door back and forth like a desolate wasteland. The air had the sharp, sickly smell of decay. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was another alert from the Ring camera. The screen glowed, showing the front porch. The woman was there again, crawling across the steps, her movements slower now, more deliberate. But behind her, something else moved. The figure, twisted and broken, was standing still, waiting. It turned toward the camera, its eyes black, voids in the place of pupils. Marcus felt his stomach drop. A new wave of panic surged through him. He tried to call Dana, but her phone rang, unanswered. "Where are you?" he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. He turned back to the house, feeling the growing sense of dread in his bones. He had to find her. The door creaked open. He stepped inside and found himself face to face with the mirror in the hallway. The reflection was distorted, warping like something alive. The woman stood there again, this time standing still, staring right at him, smiling an impossibly wide smile. Then her reflection flickered. It was Dana. Marcus froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. He blinked. When his eyes reopened, the mirror no longer reflected him. It was all dark, the glass now empty. Behind him, a voice whispered his name. He spun around, but the hallway was empty. The door to Nicole's room swung open, revealing nothing but darkness. No lavender smell, no faint glow, just silence. With a burst of adrenaline, Marcus ran to the stairs, calling out for Dana, his footsteps echoing louder than he wanted them to. He reached the top and stopped dead in his tracks. The door to Nicole's room was wide open, just as it had been in the Ring footage. He stepped inside, the floor creaking beneath him. The room felt colder than it ever had. The bed was untouched, perfectly made. But underneath it, the faint lavender scent lingered. He knelt and pulled the sheets back. There was nothing there. Nothing. But the door clicked shut behind him. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. The woman. She was standing in the corner of the room, her pale skin glowing in the darkness, her eyes fixed on him, a smile creeping onto her lips. Her fingers twitched. Marcus scrambled to his feet, his chest tight, panic surging through him. The Ring feed flashed back to life on his phone, showing the same twisted figure crawling toward him. This time, the woman wasn't alone. She was surrounded by them. More figures, twisted and grotesque, their bodies contorted in unnatural ways, closing in on him. They reached out for him, their fingers scraping against the floor as they moved. The door slammed shut behind him, locking with an audible click. Marcus turned to face the woman. The last thing he saw was her facial, eyes wide and black, her smile too large, her fingers reaching for his throat. And then, everything went dark. The next morning, Dana woke up in her bed. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting long shadows on the walls. Her head throbbed, as if she hadn't slept in days. She felt dizzy, disoriented, and then she noticed the phone on the floor beside her bed, its screen shattered. The Ring camera feed was still open, playing a video on loop. It was the footage from last night. Marcus, standing in Nicole's room, surrounded by the twisted figures. The woman crawled toward him, and then everything went black. But when Dana reached to turn off the phone, the camera feed didn't stop. It kept playing, and now she was in the video. It was only a matter of time before it came for her too.